Welcome to a third episode of the Analytics Experience, presented by Bruno Carrera and Alfredo Serrano. Today, we have a guest speaker here. We have Nick Singh, best-selling author of Ace Data Science Interview, also formerly employed by Meta and Google, and creator of the SQL platform, Data Lemur. Nick, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me.
We're really excited, Nick, to have you here. We are huge fans of your work. And we want to also, regardless of all the accomplishments that you already did in your career, that we follow each one of them, we want to know a little bit more about your personal history, about how you get there.
For sure, yeah. No, I've always loved data, math, and coding. In college, I kind of studied systems engineering, which is a mix of math, statistics, and a little bit of business. And I also minored in computer science. So I've always kind of straddled the line between data, engineering, and I ran a startup in college that kind of showed me about growth engineering, which is about using data and A/B testing to kind of grow and improve products. So that startup was called Rapstock. It was like a hip hop stock marketplace. I know that sounds crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
Think about like fantasy football, where you draft football players onto your virtual team and you get points based on how they do. I basically made something similar where you draft hip hop artists to your fantasy label, and based on Spotify data, based on streaming data, I could say how well each artist was doing and I would reward people differently. So that idea came out of me being a DJ in high school, and then also me, wanting to quantify my music taste, wanting to build a platform, wanting to build a game, and kind of combining my music, my data interest, my marketing interest, it all came into one thing. That's kind of what led me to Facebook's growth team, where again, at Facebook scale, I got to analyze data about Facebook users and try to figure out bottlenecks in the user acquisition process and improve the user retention of new users. So that's kind of what I worked on at Facebook. And I did some data engineering work at Google. And these days, I wrote the book, and I did that mostly just because throughout all of this, I've always been interested in helping people who were a little bit behind me in their career. And by behind me, I mean when I was a college senior, I was thinking, what should college juniors and sophomores do, right? And then when I started as a new grad, I started writing on LinkedIn, hey, I'm working at Facebook as a new grad. Here's what you can do too if you're going to be graduating soon. And then after Facebook, after SafeGraph, geospatial analytics startup where I worked at called SafeGraph, each step I kind of kept writing for people who were a year or two behind me. And by behind, again, I just mean people who were, following a similar journey, who were just, happened to be a few years younger, not like behind, like in that sense. And that got really popular. And it's kind of earned me 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. And when it got to about 40K is kind of when I realized, I'm onto something. People want to hear more from me, when I partnered with my co-author to go write that book. So that's kind of the personal story of like how I even got here and how I kind of turned into this career coach and author, even though in school I didn't try to be an author or career coach or anything like that.
Absolutely. And thank you for providing that context. It sounds amazing to see that timeline and how you went from point A to point B to now helping people. We want to ask you, what actually pushed you to write the book? Because first of all, for all of you guys that don't know, Ace Data Science Interview is considered to be the best book and mod, practicing for coding interviews and actually landing roles at FAANG companies. So Nick, what was that point that made you think, all right, now that I work for already 2 FAANG companies, I'm just going to go and get into writing, and I'm going to get into combining math, SQL, coding interviews, questions, and resume formats. How do you get to that point?
So it happened because, one, there's another really good book called Cracking the Coding Interview that I had liked, but I had always wondered, why is there nothing for data science, ML, and data analyst jobs? So that was kind of always in the back of my head, nothing exists for data jobs. And then the second big thing was when COVID hit, it gave me a lot more free time along with my co-author, Kevin, who's an ex-Facebook data scientist, as well as he worked as a quant on Wall Street. So he's another super data-driven guy. He worked on Facebook groups, and then he did some crazy derivatives work. I can't even understand or explain it. And he can't even really talk about it because it's Wall Street and they're very strict with these things. But anyways, it was COVID and we were stuck at home. We were good friends. We had this idea for the longest time. As mentioned, my LinkedIn had already gotten to 40,000 followers. So I already was giving career advice, not like a full-on career coach, but like people liked what I had to say. And it was that kind of moment where I realized, whoa, like people are getting laid off because of COVID. People are having their job offers rescinded. We know that this should exist. And we're like, why hasn't anyone done it? And then Kevin and I were like, shit, you know, maybe we should be the ones to do it, right? If no one's doing it, I guess we'll do it and we'll see what happens. And 16,000 copies later and the #1 bestseller, it paid off. But it was kind of random. We didn't think it would be this successful, and we didn't really like say that this was our goal for the longest time. You know, we just thought someone needed to do something, and in the end, we just did it.
I think something really inspiring is like how you started saying in the beginning what you started doing with the hip hop rappers project, how you end up here. This is a good example, like what you can do just with a simple idea as that, and then understand the necessity that how people can learn from this and actually of something that they enjoy too. That's part of the reasons of Fredo and I, we decided also to do this podcast. Because we want people to actually learn data in a friendly way. And imagine how fun it have to be like learning all this data from the topic like hip hop.
Sure. Right. So I'm a big fan, and that's something I tell a lot of people in their own careers, you know, to follow your interest, follow your passions, put that work out there in public, right? Like I liked helping people in their careers, but it wouldn't mean shit if I hadn't started writing on LinkedIn, right? It would have just stayed in my head, or it would have helped, you know, the few people around me, right? And same way with hip hop. I loved music. I had this idea. I didn't just do my own hip hop analysis. I made a platform around it. And same way with the book, a lot of people have book ideas. Almost everyone has in LA, everyone has a movie script idea. In SF, everyone has a startup idea. In New York, everyone has a business idea. Everyone is full with ideas, but barely anyone ever works on them and puts them out there. And that's kind of the big kind of lesson that I've learned, and I kind of advocate others. Even if it's a small thing, like if it's just a blog post, get it out there. Even if it's one small data analysis, put it on GitHub. It's one small Tableau dashboard, put it on Tableau Public, you know, make it public, be proud of your work and share it. Because when it's sitting on your laptop, it's not doing you any good. Or when it's just an idea in your brain, it doesn't do anyone any good.
You know, something also that I want to add, that being a not like experienced programmer, like perhaps as you also, Alfredo, that have a little more experience in my case, when I saw the book, I appreciated the balance of your personal history that you put inside the book, and also all the problems that you put that perhaps it could be the questions. Like that balance of your personal story with the applied part, and having like both significantly content that can help you to get an idea of what is the experience, not only the problem solving part of the interview. I think for me, that's one of the greatest part about the book.
No, I'm glad you appreciate that, Bruno. And the truth is, getting a job isn't just about technical skills. It's a lot about the resumes, the portfolio projects, sending cold emails, networking with people, acing the behavioral interview. So we made sure, Kevin and I had really debated. We spent a long time writing the book. And at one point we're like, you know what, maybe we should just not do that first part, and we should just focus on technical things. And we kind of debated, and we're so glad that we ended up doing it because, you know, it truly is a big part. And sure, people might be not have the perfect technical skills, but there's still room for you in the analytics and data world.
Yep.
If you can sell your story, if you can network with people, if you can present yourself well, if you can build a portfolio project that demonstrates your skills, you might not have the world's best SQL interview skill or might be able to solve really hard coding questions from lead code. But if you could have your own independent project and it's on GitHub, that's a really good fallback plan. That still counts for something. And that's why, you know, we had to put both parts in the book.
And again, congrats on the book. The book's amazing. And it's helped so many people that I always ask myself, because at that point, I also want to tell you, your book got me multiple interviews. One of them was with Meta. And I actually landed a job following all of your tactics, which going from the resume, the cold emails that you guys also provide so many templates for it. And it's so useful to actually have just like a great layout of what you should be doing, especially in our field that is so competitive right now. And everyone's trying to be different. Unless you actually like get down to your resume, your portfolio projects, what else can you bring as a human to a team of analytics? It's very competitive to get into like data science and to just land a job. Like what would be the tactics you would recommend for anyone that is listening to us right now to deploy when trying to like land a job in big data?
Yeah, no, getting a job is hard. It's hard for everyone. It's hard all the time. And especially now when we're recording, there's a little bit of a recession. There's layoffs every week from some of these big companies. It's always been tough. And especially if you're international, again, that's going to be tough. But all hope is not lost, right? Obviously, there's some things you can do. The biggest thing that I talk about that I think that people don't do enough, actually, there's two things. It's one, building portfolio projects and getting them published. Published meaning putting them on GitHub, putting them on Tableau Public, really getting it out there and deploying your work, right? If you want to be a machine learning engineer, you got to deploy your model. You want to be a data analyst, you have to show us your dashboard or you show us some SQL scripts you can write. So that's the one big thing that I think people don't do enough of is build portfolio projects. And the second thing is it's not just enough to build them. People need to know that you built them. And that comes from sending cold emails and writing to hiring managers on LinkedIn, right? People don't use LinkedIn DMs well enough. You know, they send really weird messages. They say, hi, I'd love to connect. They send something like, hey, saw you're hiring, consider me. They write the most generic things when they can write, hey, Bruno, I saw you're a hiring manager for the geospatial team at big company. I have this really awesome geospatial data project, and I studied this in college. Do you have 2 moments? Do you have some time next week to really quickly discuss the open position you have on your team? I'd love to know your background into geospatial data and something else about their background. Suddenly it's like, whoa, this person wrote me a crisp email, right? That wasn't a long flowing thing. That wasn't all about me saying 16 bullet points. That was just, hey, I do geospatial data too. That's what you do. I have some past experience. Here's my project. Do you want to talk? Once you write that, especially at lesser known companies, which don't have the name recognition of FAANG, they don't get that many interviewees who spend that time to understand the company, what they build, what they're doing, what they're looking for. A lot of people just shotgun applications. So I think it's when you do this kind of personalized high-touch outreach, combined with building projects that actually showcase your own skills, that's like a winning formula. And I think that's what people need to do to really stand out.
Well, thanks for those tips. And as a matter of fact, I think that related to our personal story more, we couldn't be like more agreement with you because as a matter of fact, when we were job hunting, sending cold emails to people, actually, in my case, for example, I had like 12 projects on my portfolio website, right? Which is live. And as you said, it's also published on GitHub, Tableau, and many other platforms. It's curious because I had the chance of actually tailoring those projects to those specific emails. I was sending an email to Nike, for example, because I did a project with my Huawei watch and all the running distance that I cover in a month and everything. And unfortunately, didn't land a job, obviously, in there. But they were so surprised that I actually got a very specific topic. I made my personal input out of it, got my personal results, and were able to transmit it to them on a very short, cold email that I think that you're absolutely right. It all goes back to the point of being personal, getting down your technical skills, and being able to show that you can explain correctly what you did, what was the purpose behind it, what were the results, so that you guys can understand what my skills are.
Exactly. No, that's super well said. And I'm so glad that you had that experience as well, that it actually worked. And again, these things get you an interview. It's not like a foolproof thing to getting a job. But often in this kind of hiring market, just getting an interview is hard enough, right? Because online, when you apply on LinkedIn, there's like usually 200 other people who applied to the same job and you like never hear back. You don't even get rejected. You just don't hear from them.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the way to kind of go, and it doesn't always work, but it's a big numbers game. So if you send that kind of high touch outreach, it will really help. And you don't even need 12 projects to do it.
Yep.
1, 2 good projects that are targeted. Let's say you were a former nurse or you studied public health and then you do a healthcare project. You don't need 60 projects. You just need a healthcare project. And then you go message healthcare systems and health tech companies and you say, look, I'm not the world's best data scientist. I come from a public health background, nursing background, but I did this healthcare project and I have some domain knowledge and I have some data skills and I can prove it. Do you want to talk? And suddenly it's like, whoa, you don't have a master's in CS, but you might still be able to get interviews.
Nick, also I want to ask you about Data Lemur, that we mentioned it in the beginning. I want you to talk to us a little bit more about that, like how it works and how people can actually learn applying all these commands in SQL and actually get heads-on the work.
Absolutely. So SQL is a hugely important skill because most of this data resides in databases. So as an analyst or data scientist, almost always you're going to be needing to write your own SQL query to pull down the data from the database, right? And as such, most companies often in their first or second technical interview round will ask you some form of SQL question. So the book had sold 16,000 copies in its first year, and the biggest feedback we kept getting over and over again was, look, we love the SQL chapter. I love the concepts you explained in it, but I wish the problems you had in your book, we could actually run or test ourselves against them. So at the 1-year anniversary, just about a month ago, Data Lemur, actually it hasn't even been a month, but Data Lemur came out. It's an interactive SQL interview platform that features 50 plus SQL interview questions from real companies. And it's an online platform where you can type your code, run it, submit it, get it auto-graded. There's a discussion board for each question that discusses it with hundreds of other people's, approaches, so you can go learn from others. Plus, each question comes with hints to help you kind of walk through these questions because they are pretty hard. I mean, of course, we categorize them into easy, medium, and hard problems, but still, even the easy interview question is still an interview question. It's not a quick little tutorial that's meant to be easy. This is still a real company asking this in a real interview. So it's still a little hard. So we wrote hints. We also wrote solutions, and it's all 100% free. Every single thing I just described is free. So definitely people should check it out.
Nick, that's so great because it's really interesting that you said that people were asking to actually can run the codes inside the chapters on the book. Alfredo and I, in our last episode, we were just mentioning, to be able to learn data, you need to learn of a trial and error. Doesn't matter how many mistakes you make. The point is to actually learn what you're doing, and of practicing like everything else, you're eventually going to have it right. And that's something I want to add to all this, because we were saying last time that you need to trial and error to be able to actually find a solution inside the problems.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with getting these questions wrong, because a lot of people use the hints, a lot of people use the solutions, a lot of people use the discussion board. So it's not just turned into a SQL interview platform. For a lot of people, it's just turned into a SQL practice platform, or a way to learn SQL, which has been really interesting evolution. I mean, it's only a few weeks old, but many people are already saying really good things, and it has thousands of users already. So it's been really exciting.
Absolutely. And we're really excited for your platform to grow too. Because as a matter of fact, we've both been able to try it out ourselves. I was even able to be a beta tester for you, which I still appreciate. And thank you for that. And at the same time, I think I want to touch on the topic that it's great because compared to many online courses, they tend to be really superficial, especially when it comes to SQL. Because it'd be just like, hey, apply this command, this word, we need you to do a filter. So you just got to put in quotes, year, whatever. And I feel like it unfortunately gives you a very false sense of hope in the way that you've learned, but you haven't, because you've just been typing off stuff. Once you get down to Data Lemur, you actually have a real life problem, which you got to solve in your head first. Think about it, and then you actually get to type it down. And it's so interesting to see that, wow, I'm actually applying data this way.
Something I want to add to what Alfredo said. If we think about it, all the other websites that you do these practices in SQL, they're like models, like when you're in school. They teach you the theoretical part, and they teach you how to do specifically one command. In Data Lemur, was my first experience putting myself, applying the commands in SQL, I'm actually making sense of them in the order they're supposed to be.
Exactly.
And that's I think that's what is really special about Data Lemur.
No, for sure. And I think we will kind of put out some tutorial content eventually. But as of today, it's definitely more about kind of applying your knowledge and applying your skills to practice SQL rather than learn about one individual command.
I also want to mention, now that we discovered that, why don't we go back to interviewing for FAANG companies? Because now that you tied up that there's many rounds of SQL in interviews, which like companies like Meta, Amazon are implementing more and more. And unfortunately, it tends to be like 6-7 rounds of interviews, and most of them are just SQL based. Why don't you tell us what was your experience interviewing with those type of companies, and what would you recommend our audience to go through?
Yeah, so I just want to put one thing that actually data science interviews and data analyst interviews cover SQL, but they also cover a whole lot of things, which is kind of why the book exists and has chapters for probability, statistics, machine learning, coding, SQL, product sense, and case studies. Because SQL is a big thing, but it is by no means the only thing, which is what makes data analysts and data science interviewing so hard. But, that's what it is. My own experience interviewing with these big companies, I mean, it was really tough, and I failed at a lot of companies, right? Like, that's the reason Kevin and I actually wrote the book, not because we aced every single interview presented to us, right? Because if we had, we wouldn't have spent so much time thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we wrote the book because we ourselves struggled. We ourselves had to learn. We ourselves aren't geniuses, and we had to figure out, wow, oh, let's go practice. Oh, where are the practice resources? Oh, how do we explain things better? Let's learn about this. We wrote the book ourselves. So overall for us interviewing, it was like a grueling process filled with lots of failure, which is why we focus so much on like trying to help others and kind of smooth it out for them. By no means did we completely fail. I mean, Kevin and I both worked at Facebook. He worked at Bloomberg. I worked at Google. I did an internship with Microsoft. So, we've been able to be successful, but it is still a hard journey. Other than that, it's been different at each of the different companies. But as I outlined, SQL is something you're always going to see. Coding in Python for an analyst or data science is something you're usually going to see. And then some kind of business sense or product sense, open-ended question is what you're usually going to see for data roles at these big companies.
Nick, also, I want to almost finish with this question. Like, what do you recommend to people that want to get into data? Because we'll discuss in all this interview about people that want to get a job, but what about the people that want to get to learn about data and with all with the book and the Data Lemur, what do you recommend to people to do or to be able to get inside this field?
To actually just learn data, I think that you first start with Excel, master Excel, because it's a foundational tool. And it's like a good starting point because even in Excel, you can do some interesting data viz. You can actually build regression models in Excel. There's some ways to actually import simple machine learning models into Excel. So actually Excel is really powerful, and it gives you a platform on which to learn. Because actually learning 5 different things at the same time is so hard and causes you to fail. Do you know what I mean? Like, just to learn Python, you have to install Python, which means you have to understand your terminal. You have to understand pip with a Python package installer. You have to learn about programming. You have to do so many things at once. Versus, hey, if you know Excel, at least, that gives you a simple UI interface. You don't need to know advanced programming to work with Excel, and then you go more complicated. Then after Excel, you can work with Tableau. Because again, it's a drag and drop. You can learn about data viz. It's highly important skill. I mean, it's similar to Power BI, and usually companies are okay with Tableau or Power BI. So for a data analyst job, Excel plus Tableau is usually a good starting point. And go then get a job in data analytics or as a data analyst or as a business analyst. Because it's okay, data science might not be an entry-level job for a lot of people if you don't have a hard technical degree before it, or you don't have like proper CS internships or data science internships. It's not something you can expect to just kind of self-teach and then get a data science job, right? So there's nothing wrong with just sticking with Excel, sticking with Tableau and Power BI, and trying to get a data analyst job. Now, that still might not be enough skills, but then SQL is a great third thing to layer on top of it. Because yes, it's sort of a programming language, sort of not. I don't want to be, so nuanced because some people consider it, but technically it might not be, but technically it is. Whatever. Anyways, the point is SQL is a programming language, but simply much simpler to learn than Python, right? Because Python is the whole thing. SQL, you can just quickly run in the browser. Like there's all these tutorials. So that's kind of where I recommend to start. Start with Excel, then learn Tableau or Power BI, probably Tableau because it's free, and then go learn SQL. Again, free, easy to do. And that's the good meat to start as a data analyst. Go work a data analyst or business analyst job for a year, year and a half. And then your next step will be more obvious, what you should do from there, whether it's to learn Python and programming, whether it's to do some certifications, whether it's to just grow as a data analyst. Your next step will be more obvious, but I don't want to work on, the steps that you need to take at year 1 or year 2. Let's first get that first SQL, Excel, and Tableau down, and then from there, the path opens up.
And going back to that, now that you've talked about how to learn data and land those interviews, what happens once you actually get the job? You had the chance of working with one of the most prestigious companies that there is, that are Google and Meta. Why don't you tell us a bit about your experience with them and how did it turn out for you?
Yeah, it was good. So at Google, I was on Google's Nest Labs, which makes those like Nest thermostats and Nest cams. It's like their IoT division. That was cool, working on like data infrastructure and data engineering. I kind of didn't love data engineering. It's like cool, maybe, but at some point I just felt like I was moving data from one place to another and building pipelines, which is like not the world's most interesting thing, but this is the kind of learning you do, so it's fine. Facebook's growth team was much more interesting to me because, again, I was on the growth engineering team working on user retention. So I got to kind of combine my software engineering skills to build products, set up A/B tests, and then use my data background to analyze the results of the A/B tests. And I had like a little bit of a marketing and product management tie-ins because it's not like some obscure, abstract like problem we're solving. It's literally we're building products for people. So you can think like a designer, you can think like a PM, because this is not some abstract theoretical problem I'm solving. This is a very real product with real users building real experiences. So that one was more interesting. I worked a ton of hours, so I might have burnt out a little bit towards the end. And yeah, that's kind of what led me to work at Safegraph. And the other thing was I realized over time that working at big companies is not for me. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll do it again someday, but I definitely feel like I have a very entrepreneurial drive and I just love doing things. And I definitely think that big companies have a lot of structure and a lot of levels and like a lot of like process, which makes sense. They're big companies. Like it makes sense that they do it. But I just know I'm definitely the type of person to just do things. And I really hate barriers and roadblocks. I'm just the kind of person to just, let's write a book. Let's make Data Lemur. Let's build Rapstock. So startups is more my interesting place to be. And I worked at Safegraph for 2 years, which was really fun because they were a small startup and I got to do a lot of different things for them.
Nick, we are more than grateful with you for your time that you spent these evenings with us. And also, like, I want to say that you are such a unique character because that balance about being an entrepreneur, but also being a technical guy, I think that's a big inspiration for Fredo and I.
Sure.
No, I appreciate that. It's always tough to balance, right? Because my own skills get rusty. But then when I'm working on my technical skills, I get that itch of like, hey, I'm sitting here coding all the day. But I want to go build something for a lot of people. I don't want to just be sitting and coding. So it's always something I myself have to balance. But I'm glad, there's other people in that boat of people who do technical work who also are interested in their own side projects. And I think this podcast is a testament to what you guys are, that side of being data people, but then also wanting to do something extra.
Yeah, thank you for making a difference in this industry and inspiring young people actually to make a difference in trying to teach others that what they did, they can inspire someone else to become also what they're supposed to.
No, I appreciate it.
What they want to be.
I appreciate it, and thank you for having me on this platform. So
thank you, and again, we wish you the best of luck with the book and with Data Lemur. We know that you're going to grow a lot, and we just want to be there for the journey. Thank you again so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. All right, cool.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Nick.